Now, SABMiller shareholders have approved the brewer's $104 billion takeover by larger rival Anheuser-Busch InBev. The SABMiller meetings held in London followed a vote earlier today by AB InBev shareholders who also approved the deal, which has been about a year in the making. The deal is expected to be finalized by the 10th of next month. It's expected to boost AB InBev's prospects in developing markets in Africa and China, where an SABMiller joint venture produces Snow. That's the world's best-selling beer by volume. AB InBev has already won all regulatory clearance it needs, gaining backing from China in July and the European Union in May. Well, let's get more now from our correspondent in London, Catherine Drew. Catherine, good afternoon. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. This vote is in favour of the deal. I suppose it was expected, but crucial for the purchase going forward.
Well, it was expected, actually, but it wasn't a given, and certainly there was some nervousness in recent days because many smaller investors were very upset, actually, about the terms of the deal. The deal was valued at, finally at around £45 a share, but two of the largest shareholders, the cigarette maker Altria and Bevco of Colombia, they were given a partial share deal, which was very much more favourable. So quite a few investors had launched a campaign in recent weeks to try to refuse this deal. They also thought that it undervalued SABMiller, and I think that's a view that many people in the industry have some sympathy with. But in the end, this did pass overwhelmingly. This morning, the chairman of the board, Jan du Plessis, said he recommended it unanimously. The board recommended it unanimously to all the shareholders, and indeed it did pass. So it will go ahead. So the world's largest and second largest beer makers will be merging.
Catherine, I see AB InBev shareholders also voting to keep the company's name after the takeover. How significant is that?
Well, I mean, there's been so much over the past 10 years, really, so much consolidation in the drinks industry. AB, of course, stands for Anheuser-Busch, which InBev, then the companies joined. I think that was about 7 years ago. So really, I mean, you were playing around with initials. What were they going to call it? Perhaps they just thought that it was really just best to make a clean slate of that. Of course, SABMiller is a very well-known brand, sort of almost like a household name, particularly in parts of Africa, of course, and you know, they will be wanting to put their stamp on these markets. I'm not quite sure how significant the name, the keeping is, but of course they had to choose something.
And I see the CEO of AB InBev pledging once again that he will drive growth, create value, so that narrative continuing.
Yes, that's right. They were obviously very keen for SABMiller. There's not an awful lot of geographical overlap of these two companies. They wanted SABMiller. This was the big prize because, of course, it has such a vast presence in so many African markets, which, of course, are growing. Beer consumption there is on the up. There's a rising populations, rising middle classes, of course, who are turning to beer. So that was indeed very popular. And Latin America as well. SABMiller has some key investments in Latin America. That was another market. So AB InBev saying that this acquisition really makes it the first global beer company, and you can't argue with that. They've got just under 30% of the world's beer market now. So basically, if you're drinking 3 beers, one of those is you've got a good chance that it's going to be made by these two companies.
Yes, it's an interesting fact. Catherine Drew from London, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.